People who work for airlines, what are the best-kept secrets passengers don't know? Story 1. I worked 5 years as a flight attendant for a major U.S. airline. The starting pay when I joined was $17,000 per year, and I was based in D.C. Flight attendants are only paid when the plane is off the gate. We show up to the airport an hour before departure to meet the rest of our crew, often for the very first time, brief for the flight, prep for boarding, and board the plane. And during that hour we are earning a per diem rate of $1.50 per hour. If your flight attendant seems less than happy to help you during boarding, that might be part of the reason. The other half is that some flight attendants are just grumpy. If you think it's bad being on a 5-hour flight with them, try being on a 3-day trip working with them. Yes, people do try joining the Mile High Club. I wouldn't advise it. The lavatories are disgusting. That water on the floor? It's not water. Just think about that the next time you go in there barefoot or in socks. Flight attendants aren't always fond of passengers. I know, big surprise, but passengers have some habits that really don't endear them to us. Some of my favorites include dirty tissues being handed to me, dirty diapers being handed to me, cups someone has drooled on being handed to me, or an empty cup shoved into my face with no explanation. I've been poked in the back during drink service because someone wanted a refill, or asked to fetch orange juice while trying to hook someone up to an AED. Once I left my meal in the galley to answer a call light, only to return and find someone's trash piled on top of my tray. Not all passengers are bad though. Some would bring small bags of candy for the flight crew. Little gestures like that truly make our day. Manners matter. I've even comped drinks in coach for polite passengers. It's not much, but it's the best I can do sometimes. And yes, we can tell the difference between genuine kindness and sucking up. It's not exactly a secret, but flight attendants are thoroughly trained to handle emergencies. We retrain every year on firefighting, AED, CPR, first aid, and emergency evacuation. And yes, it works. Last year my oven short-circuited and caught fire. And instead of running out of the house, I grabbed the extinguisher and put it out. Also, in case you're wondering, no, I don't fly right back after an 8-hour flight to Frankfurt. I get a hotel and rest for a full day before I have to work my return flight. Anyway, I think that's enough for now. Happy to answer questions. I'm an aviation nerd and loved almost every minute of my job, even the tough ones. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I worked as a ramp agent for Ryanair in London Stansted. Every day without fail a bag would come down from the check-in desk through the conveyor system, hit the bottom and start vibrating. Everyone knew why, and the source of the vibrating had to be found, 100% of the time. It's a personal massaging toy. This meant reading the passenger's name and flight information, and boarding the plane to request the passenger to step off the plane and open their bag with around 6 or 7 other ramp agents watching. It was the only fun we had, as they opened the bag and pulled out all sorts of different devices. Thinking back to it, it was kind of evil but definitely funny as heck. My advice, ladies and gents, don't leave the batteries in your toy when going on holiday, or you could be next. Also, pack fragile items well, that is, guitars and golf clubs. Ramp agents, not me, however, enjoy throwing other people's valuables around. Story 3. The drinking water used for making coffee, tea, etc. should never be consumed. The holding tanks in these sometimes 60-year-old planes are never cleaned. They have accumulated so much greenish grime on the walls that in some places it can be inches thick. This fact is well known by all airline employees. I work and study in all aspects of the aviation industry and can tell you nothing is performed intuitively. The holding tanks in old planes accumulate thick grime, making the water unsafe to drink. And whatever you do, do not drink the water in the lavatory. It is bad enough to wash your hands in it. We sanitize the water tank at selected maintenance intervals. However, parasites can develop resistance to these cleaners. Check the outside of the aircraft when walking in. If the paint is in poor condition, the plane is likely in poor condition. Skydrol, hydraulic fluid, is a corrosive substance that will dissolve many materials. So, if the paint is missing, it's probably due to a skydrol leak. No one wants a hydraulic leak at 35,000 feet in the air, since you can't just pull over and refill the reservoir. Story 4. This will probably get buried, but I am an aircraft fueler. One thing I cannot stress enough is how your pets are treated. While your airline will take the best possible care, some things cannot be avoided, such as the noise on the ramp. I cannot stand out there without ear protection. So imagine your pet sitting out on the ramp, waiting to be loaded onto the plane, exposed to the same loud noise. Please, think twice before flying your pets. Edit. Wow, so much attention. Didn't expect this. So many questions, so I'll try to hit some main points. Flying with pets is sometimes unavoidable. I'm not saying flying your pet makes you a bad owner. Just bear in mind the conditions they settle experience. They might need some extra cuddles when they get back. Many baggage handlers I've seen are really good with pets, but not all. The people moving pets onto the plane are often underpaid, certainly less than they deserve. Every airline has different policies. Check with them and ask about any VIP or in-cabin options, which, while not perfect, may be more comfortable for your pet. The people who look after your pet before loading are usually great and really love what they do. Results may vary from airport to airport. Story 5. I worked for Southwest as a flight attendant. Those blankets and pillows, they just get refolded and put back in the bins between flights. The only fresh ones I ever saw were on the first flight of the morning, originating from a provisioning city. Also, if you have ever spread your peanuts on your tray and eaten, or even just touched your tray, you have likely ingested some unpleasant residue. I saw more dirty diapers laid out on those trays than food. And those trays? Yeah, I never saw them cleaned or sanitized even once. Despite this, I loved working for Southwest. It was a great company and an awesome job. Just some icky stuff here and there in the cabin. At least during the 4 years I was there. They may have changed the process by now. Story 6. I was a ramp agent for Delta. A lot of freight gets shipped on commercial flights. One of these items was always called HR on the radios. HR was an abbreviation for human remains. Some people die far away from where they want to be buried. They're packed in wood-framed boxes, so you would never know what was inside except by the strange shape of them. They were a pain to handle. People weigh a bit. Add a casket and shipping container, and you're looking at anywhere from 250 to 400 pounds. Also, the bin doors tend to be pretty narrow. Wrestling these things out of the plane was always a giant hassle. HR. In the middle bin of a Mad Dog M-90. No thanks. If you hear about an HR while flying Delta, it means there's a dead body in cargo. Story 7. When you experience a hard landing in bad weather, it is not due to a lack of pilot skills. It is actually intentional. If the runway is covered in water, the airplane must touch down firmly to puncture the water layer and prevent hydroplaning. Mobile electronic devices do not typically cause aircraft failure, but they can be highly distracting to pilots. Just imagine sitting in the cockpit, descending to your destination, and hearing interference from over 100 cell phones reconnecting to the network. I have missed a clearance or two because of that. The air passengers breathe is compressed air taken from the aircraft engines. A significant portion, 25 to 50%, is directed to the cockpit, and the rest is supplied to the cabin. The air exits through a small valve in the rear of the aircraft fuselage. The captain holds nearly unlimited authority once the aircraft doors are closed. He may arrest individuals, issue fines, or even record the will of a dying passenger. In most airlines, the only difference between the captain and the first officer is their rank. Duties are shared equally, with pilots alternating between flying and supporting roles on each flight. Story 8. Some airlines do not pay pilots or flight attendants for flights that cancel, which does not sound so bad until you start thinking about the safety implications of it. A little short on the rent this month? Then I do not see that hydraulic leak. I cannot afford to have the flight canceled. Does the child need to see the doctor? Maybe. I do not report the torn-up carpet that someone might trip on in an evacuation, because carpet takes too long to replace, so the flight would cancel. Not saying this happens all the time because most crews are true professionals and can put their job ahead of their paycheck, but it happens enough to give you goosebumps. Throw in some seriously low pay, less than $20,000 a year for many first-year pilots, and you've got a subtle incentive to overlook safety issues. Throw in some seriously low pay, less than $20,000 a year for many first-year pilots, and you've got a subtle incentive to overlook safety issues. Story 9. I have a friend who is a commercial pilot. Around 5 years ago, he was doing a flight from Los Angeles to Tokyo when an anonymous caller phoned in a bomb threat while they were over the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Apparently, they have procedures for this kind of situation, but there was nothing anyone could do except stay calm and not alert the passengers, obviously. He said for the rest of the flight, every bump of turbulence made his adrenaline spike. They took the case especially seriously because there was a group of foreign dignitaries sitting in the first-class cabin. Story 10. Passenger weighing in. If you have a musical instrument, never check it. Take it to the gate with you. If they don't have room on the plane, they can gate check it and put it on last. When you deboard at your next stop, it will be waiting for you as soon as you exit the plane. Edit obligatory. Thanks for the highest rated comment. A note I've heard from baggage handlers and flight attendants that they do not appreciate musicians doing this. As I already said, if there isn't room on the plane, then I'll gate check it. This ensures that it goes on last and is taken off first, then left at the ramp for you to pick up immediately after deboarding the plane. I'm sorry if this is an inconvenience for people in the industry, but all my care was given when I lost my deployment gift to careless handlers and was not refunded the full amount to get a new one. You can move your things over in the closet so I can protect my $1,500 baby. P.S. I have never had a bad experience doing this. Every flight attendant I've done this with has been more than accommodating. This ensures that it goes on last and is taken off first, then left at the ramp for you to pick up immediately after deboarding the plane. Story 11. Aluminum, unlike steel, does not have a lower stress limit for fatigue cracking. In simple terms, this means that whenever a load is applied, it will always form tiny cracks. Aircraft are designed so that under regular loads, the cracks remain microscopic, but they are always there and increase with each flight due to repeated stress cycles. Maintenance teams are responsible for identifying these cracks on each individual plane and carefully monitoring their growth. Source: my mechanical engineering professor from college. But they are always there and increase with each flight due to repeated stress cycles. Story 12. I've been at an airline for the better part of 3 years now, and there are definitely a few great things to keep in mind whenever you take a commercial flight. Starting from the minute you get into the airport, customer service agents are the first people who can make or break your trip. Yelling, screaming, getting crabby, lewd, or patronizing only makes your trip worse. When you think you're making a point or a difference in these people's lives, you're totally wrong. They retreat to the break room and laugh about it with their coworkers, and they probably didn't go out of their way to get you a better seat. Golden rule: be nice, simple, smile, joke around, keep a positive disposition. This seems impossible when things go wrong during cancellations or delays, but believe me, those agents didn't want those things to happen either. They can and will work their magic, if you give them the opportunity. There are ways to get you a window or aisle seat even if only middle seats are showing. Believe me, a coffee goes a very long way at the gate if you're traveling with an airline known to upgrade. Once you're on board, those flight attendants are not only beautiful, funny, and smart, they are also highly trained professionals who can and will put their own lives at risk for a perfect stranger should the situation arise. Not many people appreciate that fact. So again, be nice. Someone else on this post also noted one of the trade secrets: chocolates. I flew transatlantic economy in August. I approached the lead flight attendant, the one who greets you as you board, introduced myself, thanked them for having me on board, exchanged pleasantries, and handed him a mini 4-pack of maple syrup. Can you guess which country I was leaving from? I sat down for about 5 minutes in my coach seat before he came by and said he was sorry, but my seat assignment was unfortunately changed. I spent the next 7 hours in a lay-flat bed with all the Grey Goose I could handle. This was a standby flight, but regular travelers can also get this treatment. I've seen it. In the flight deck, this place is just hilarious. I've flown in the jump seat on a handful of occasions and never pass up the opportunity. Between the gadgets, knobs, dials, and especially the view, this is the one place that would cure every nervous flyer. Everything that goes into making a plane and keeping it in the air is mind-boggling, and the two pilots up front know exactly what they're doing. It's like a work of art seeing them bring this thing up and down, but that's where it ends. Under 10,000 feet is where the magic happens. Above 10,000 feet, it's a lot of banter involving ex-wives, summer houses, bill payments, and catching up on 2 or 3-day-old newspapers that have probably been read 9 or 10 times. One time, the sun was shining into my eyes in the jump seat, and they took out their stack of safety cards, covered the entire windshield, kicked their feet up, and enjoyed the ride. When I jokingly blurted out, "You can see the road," they pointed to the instruments and just said, "It's right there." As the old airline adage goes, what separates perverts from alcoholics? The cockpit door. Be nice. Story 13. On some 747, Air France, and possibly others, the upper deck economy class seats have a little extra room and storage on the window seats. They have a tiny bit more legroom too, if I recall correctly. Air France used to block these off for picking seats ahead of time, unless you have a higher tier card. If you check in a bit early, you can get them. It's probably been mentioned, but SeatGuru.com is the resource for checking seats for whatever aircraft you're flying on. Additionally, if you order any kind of special meal, you get your meal first. Diabetic meals, low salt, kosher, vegetarian, whatever. Story 14. I am a commercial aircraft fueler. At my airport, we get a lot of small jets. Canada regional jets, 200, 700, 900. Embraer regional jet, 145, 737. McDonnell Douglas, 88, 95. Douglas DC-9. One of the main things as a fueler is having to overwing a plane. We do that when the single point on the plane is inoperative and have to pump 600 to 1,000 gallons of Jet A into the plane. This is when you see us, one on each side, take a small fuel pump, usually the ones you put in your car, and balance out the fuel on each side. It's a long process, usually 2 gallons per second. Fueling is labor-intensive but nowhere near as bad as the ramp agents. I also was a ramp agent for United, and most of any ramp agent will tell you, don't buy expensive luggage. When your bag weighs 30 to 40 pounds, and I have 50 to 100 bags coming to me at once, I can't treat yours with the love and care that you would like. They usually want small jets out in 20 minutes. This includes scanning bags, downloading, dropping off, scanning new bags for departure, loading, and pushing back. Pilots don't get paid when brakes are set. They get paid pilot pay when the brakes are released. You can only be pushed away, and sitting there waiting to leave for 2 hours. After that you return to the gate, and this way, you can take care of business. Your flight will get delayed or cancelled if your coffee pot is broken or inoperative. Planes break, it sucks, but respect it. The airlines care very much about safety. They will ground your plane for the smallest issue. I have seen a plane cancelled because the lavatory was clogged, but at the end of the day, you should be thankful. First-time poster, but I love my job and planes and decided to give some insight. Story 15. Passengers have no idea how complicated a flight is from a pilot's perspective. Let me walk you through it. We show up around an hour before the flight and get the paperwork. Is the weather okay? Is the forecast for the destination going to be above our minimums? Is it above minimums, but requires an alternate airport to be listed in case the weather doesn't go quite as planned? What equipment is broken at the airport that might affect these minimums? How about the departure airport? Do we need to plan for an airport to go to if we take off and have a problem, but can't get back into our departure airport due to weather, slippery runways, etc.? How about the airplane? Is everything working? Certain systems are allowed to be broken. Are there any of those on this flight? How will it affect us? Will it change the weather minimums we checked out earlier? Where is my first officer? And the flight attendants? I guess they must be on the airplane. I'll go there. Nope, they're not on the airplane. It's getting close to boarding. I'd better find them. Called scheduling. They said that they are on an inbound flight that just arrived, but on the opposite side of the airport. It'll be 10 minutes for them to swim their way through the terminal. I'll walk around while I wait. What's that on the belly? Must be hydraulic fluid? That's about all that is around there. Better call maintenance. The first officer and flight attendants are here now. That's good. But we're 10 minutes past boarding now. Maintenance shows up and checks out the mystery fluid. It's hydraulic fluid, they say. But it's old, they wipe it off. If you see any more when you get to your destination, let us know. Probably just spillage from when they serviced the hydraulics last. Tell the gate agent we're ready to board. It's 10 minutes to departure time now. 5 minutes pass? No passengers get on. A passenger is being wheeled down the jetway in an aisle chair, a narrow wheelchair designed to fit in the aisle of the airplane. It takes 5 minutes or so to get him situated. The rest of the passengers file on. Meanwhile, the first officer is getting our clearance. Bad news, there is a ground stop at our destination. We can leave, and we don't expect any more information for 30 minutes. Not that we can leave in 30 minutes. Just that we will get an update in 30 minutes. The passengers have all filed on at this point. I made an announcement apologizing for the slight delay in boarding. We needed to have maintenance come out to check something, but we're all good in that regard. Unfortunately, ATC is telling us that we can't depart yet due to weather and traffic, and we will know more in 30 minutes. You can hear the grumbles from the cockpit. 30 minutes pass, during which the first officer and I get the checklists done as far as we can, and get to know each other a bit. After all, I've never seen this guy before in my life. There are thousands of pilots at this airline. We don't all know each other. The first officer calls to find out about the update. Good news, you can leave, but you have to be airborne in 5 minutes. Shit, we're still at the gate with no engines running. Can we get them both started, run the checklists, and taxi to the runway in 5 minutes? Better have a go at it, otherwise we might miss our slot. We scramble and get it done. We take off 40 minutes late. Not too bad considering the situation. Halfway through the flight, we see a group of thunderstorms on the radar right along our route, blocking it and any options to the left of it. We ask ATC for a deviation to the right to get around that line. Unable due to traffic is the reply. Great. Now what? Center, we can take higher or lower if needed, but we need a deviation to the right. Spudmonkey 17, descend and maintain 14,000 feet, passing 16,000 feet. Deviations to the right up to 20 degrees approved. Advise when direct to wherever. Crap, we're still 2 hours from our destination. If we descend to 14,000 feet, are we going to have enough fuel? A quick punch in the flight management system, and we do, but barely. If anything else happens, we're going to have to go to plan B. Luckily, nothing else goes wrong, and we land. Although the extra weather deviations and lower altitude result in another 10 minutes added to the flight. We landed 50 minutes late. We park at the gate and open the cockpit door. Various comments come in from the passengers ranging from the most common and apathetic thanks to the occasional "this is why I don't fly your airline" or any other variation of it. The plane is empty and we have to start the process all over again for the next flight. The problem now is that we didn't start at all 1 hour before departure. It's departure time now, and the gate agent is asking if you are ready to board. You haven't even looked at the paperwork yet. So, you want to be a pilot? Story 16. Flight attendant here. Pilots don't fix the plane, they fly it. If it's major, they call maintenance. Stop asking the pilots to just fix the plane. Sometimes it takes a while. I'm sorry, it sucks. Deal with it. My day is long, so god darn long. Please be nice. I see hundreds of people in a day. If I'm abrupt with you in any way, I apologize. I'm trying to 1. Expedite the boarding process so we can leave on time. 2. I'm running on very little sleep, and I'm cranky. 3. I've dealt with too many difficult people and/or delays that day, and my spirit is utterly crushed. You'll rarely see me upset, but many other flight attendants are less patient. I am sorry. They don't love their job like I do. We only get paid when the main cabin door is closed. I make less than $20,000 a year. This is common. I know that you know how to put on a seatbelt. I still have to do a safety demo. It's a liability issue. Don't treat me like a waitress. I'm not. I get paid less and my hours are longer, and the job involves much more than serving you a drink and some peanuts. I personally don't care if you use your electronic devices. However, don't be talking on your phone during taxi. If I can't see your phone, I don't care if you're playing Angry Birds. We're not going to crash. Many airlines have changed their rules, but mine has not, and I have to enforce the rules. People vent their frustrations about flying to me. It's hard being criticized, knowing you caused none of the problems. Believe me, it's in our best interest to keep you happy. Why would we want otherwise? The FAA makes the rules, not your flight crew. We're just the crew. Every decision comes from above. Remember that. Be nice. Story 17. I used to be an operations control center manager for a regional airline, about 900 flights a day. Ultimately, I was the guy that decided if your flight was going to be canceled. Most people don't know I exist. When passengers hear canceled due to ATC or WX or MX, it's really just a small team of people deciding if your flight is going to make it, and often it's not even your plane or flight that has the problem. In the case of ATC and weather, we will be allowed X number of arrivals an hour. We decide which ones are going and which ones will stay or reposition to another city. Passengers are usually one of the last items of consideration. Safety is always first. We won't send it if there is reason to believe it is unsafe. And if we can blame it on weather, we will. It's much cheaper for the airline if it is blamed on the weather, since they don't have as many benefits for the customer. Food vouchers, hotels, etc. The next most important thing is which crews will time out and how critical it is that they get to their next stop. The way crews are routed, we often have to cancel something today to save 3 flights that would need to be canceled tomorrow if the aircraft and crew don't get to the right place by the right time. Next is where the aircraft is routed, since they are often carrying maintenance items that expire at a certain date and can only be fixed in specific bases. After that is cargo and bags. Bags cost a lot more to get rerouted than passengers. The reason for this is that passengers can go on the next plane, but if their bags don't make it, we deliver them to you, not the airport that you were going to. Couriers can get expensive quickly, so it's better business to have your bags waiting for you rather than the other way around, even if that means kicking you off the plane and taking your bags. Last is passengers. Sometimes based on a priority list of VIPs and sometimes based on doing the most good for the largest number of people. Ultimately, regional airlines only have one customer, the major airline they serve. They are paid based on a number of metrics to summarize their performance, and there are tiers for penalty and bonus. The airline knows exactly to the minute where they are in relation to these goals, and we will often sacrifice one for the other. Example: if we are near a penalty for on-time departures within 0 minute of scheduled departure time, but have a good cushion on completion factor, we will cancel a flight just to make one go on time. I got a D in ethics, but I'm really good at math. Story 18. Not really a secret, but as a baggage handler, if you don't use a regular suitcase with handles on the top and bottom, I absolutely hate you. Edit. Also, those of you who travel the world with your body-sized backpacks are the spawn of the devil. I can't decide which is the worst piece of luggage to try and stack in an orderly manner, those huge backpacks, car seats, or golf bags. Story 19. I worked for the cargo side of an airline, and you'd be surprised what is in the hold beneath your feet. All sorts of dangerous goods such as flammable, compressed gas, corrosive materials, and toxic substances. Supercars. I regularly book these on flights. Ferraris, Aston Martin, Lamborghini, and even a Bugatti. Hazardous and non-hazardous biological samples. Bull semen, horse semen, samples of deadly viruses, and blood samples. Animals. Dogs, cats, lizards, horses, and we shipped a baby gorilla for a breeding program in Brazil. Food. I had to book 1 carton of ice cream from the United Kingdom to Dubai, pastries, chocolate, fruit, and vegetables. Weird stuff. 300 tons of sand from Copenhagen to Dubai, and weapons. Story 20. I don't work anywhere near airplanes, but I read a lot. I recently read a book with this interesting tidbit. The flight attendant's job is not to fetch you drinks or a blanket. It's to keep the passengers safe. In addition to emergency procedures, they are trained to size up every passenger that comes aboard for signs of trouble or in case they need to recruit help in an emergency. If you are a fit male passenger, the flight attendant has memorized where you are sitting. Eat it. Lots of comments, mostly civil, on my use of the word stewardess. Guilty as charged. It was late, and my brain forgot about flight attendants, and defaulted to the term I grew up with. If I've offended any flight attendants, I apologize. If I've offended any non-flight attendants, that's just weird. Story 21. Best upgrade trick. If you have no frequent flyer status and nothing else going for you that endears you to the airline, when you book, pre-select a seat as close to the rear of the airplane as you can that has a window or aisle seat reserved. This applies to 3-seat row aircraft, which most aircraft are, but also has no middle seat reserved. Reserve the window or aisle that is not reserved. Keep checking your seat assignment even until the day you depart and make sure, if possible, that you have the most rearward aisle or window seat with the other seat filled but the middle empty. When you get on the plane, keep checking out families that are heading towards the back and look for those that are trying to sit together. Families don't travel by air often and are usually not really adept at air travel, reserving seats, etc. You can initiate, or they might. Either way, ask the flight crew very politely if you can swap seats so the family can sit together, and then request if it's possible to move to first or business class. At this point, your options will be, "Mill go to first class? Ding ding. Me the good guy anyway," and swap. Say, "Never mind," and keep poor man's first class, empty middle seat, depending on your personal feeling about the situation. Done this one hundreds of times. There's no way to lose, even if you just want to be the good guy and give a good seat to a family that wants to sit together. Story 22. I've never worked for an airline, but one bit of advice I would give as a fairly frequent flyer is to be nice to everybody. Not simply because it's the decent human being thing to do and because most flight staff have to deal with grumpy, tired, or angry people all day long, but also because occasionally they will help you just for being nice. I'm usually in a bad mood when flying because I kind of hate the whole process, but I always try to be friendly and smiley to everybody I talk to at the airport. A friend of mine was flying long-haul London to New York one time, and the flight was delayed by a couple of hours. This was with BA British Airways, and predictably some of the people at the departure gate were getting a little impatient and frustrated. In the queue at the gate, which had started forming a couple of hours before, but despite multiple updates that the flight would be further delayed, people were unwilling to sit back down. The passenger, a couple of people in front of my friend, was being a total jerk to the staff, shouting at them, berating them for being incompetent, etc., to the point where the stewardess he was shouting at was visibly on the verge of tears. Sadly, some other passengers started chiming in their frustrations, and soon the staff at the gate were just having a torrent of abuse aimed at them. When they finally started boarding the plane, my friend gave up his place and stepped out of the queue just to quietly tell the girl that despite those few rude passengers, most of the passengers realized that it wasn't their fault at all and that they were all doing a great job in the circumstances. He was just being nice, because he's a human being. Afterwards, he joined the back of the queue and boarded the plane. Once everybody was on board, that same stewardess who had been on the verge of crying found my friend in his seat in economy class and told him that there had been a mistake with the seat he'd been assigned, and asked if he wouldn't mind moving. He duly got up and followed her. Then she led him to an empty seat in business class and simply told him to enjoy his flight. Bam! An 8-hour flight suddenly became a much more comfortable affair for him, simply because he showed the smallest amount of friendliness and understanding towards another human being who was just trying to do her job. The crew treated him like a king for the entire flight. Likewise, and I know it's common sense, but the security people at the airport are just trying to do their job. They want you to get through security as quickly and painlessly as you do. Same with the people at immigration. Whatever issues you have with the system aren't the fault of the individual worker, and making their lives more difficult is only going to make it worse for everybody involved. So don't huff and puff, don't complain about the process, and try not to roll your eyes at the stuff they ask you to do. It's annoying to have to remove your belt or get your laptop out of your carry-on or whatever, but in the end everybody has to do it, so put up and deal with it. Also, when checking in for your flight and you haven't checked in online, it's always worth politely inquiring as to whether you can get an emergency row seat or one at the front of the plane. These seats generally have more legroom. The worst that can happen is they'll tell you those seats are all taken. I've gotten great seats so many times just by asking this. Story 23. A 10-year airline customer service professional checking in. Here are a few tips. The FAA regulation on carry-on bags is actually an airline-specific policy. They set their own requirements and commit them to policy, and they are then held accountable through audits. FAA, TSA, internal for compliance. Customer service agents will go out of their way to help you when you are respectful and courteous. I cannot tell you how many times I have made exceptions for someone just because they were polite. If you want to bring alcohol on board, just ask the flight attendant to pour for you. This is so they have control of your consumption and can stop serving you if needed. The altitude affects your blood oxygen levels, and you will get drunk faster than you are used to at sea level. The rule is 1 drink on the ground equals 2 in the air. We are required by law to offer up to $1,300 in compensation if we involuntarily deny you boarding due to an overbooked flight. The offer for volunteers will always increase. It is based on the fare you paid and the time it takes us to get you to your destination compared to your originally scheduled arrival. Story 24. I don't work for an airline, but in economy with Kathy on long flights, you can ask for cup noodles or ice cream during the later part of the night. Once the cup noodle aroma spreads, it triggers a frenzy, and 2 flight attendants may end up preparing 14 at once. Story 25. I'm a dacer. I am constantly amazed at how airlines, in Canada especially, are able to actually make money. The airports charge fees and fees galore before the airline even boards the first passenger, and then if you need to de-ice due to snow or even frost, it's easily between $500 to $15,000 more per flight. Gilly coal is expensive, good device companies are expensive, and the bad ones are still expensive, except they just sell you their service by the liter sprayed at $8 to $14 per liter, and therefore just spray the plane heavily and send the bill. Again, I only truly know the price logistics of dacing, but that is only one piece of the pie when it comes to essential third-party services charging airlines money. They have no choice but to pay. It baffles me. This is all before actually factoring in how they finance their $130 million planes, or the fuel required to rocket them into the skies, with several thousand kilograms of your luggage and the resources needed to accommodate your in-flight entertainment and dining. Oh, and I forgot something. If there are people being deported, either accompanied or unaccompanied, they are seated in the last row. If accompanied, there will be an air marshal seated beside them. If they are not considered a substantial threat, they will be unaccompanied and appear like regular passengers. They usually board through the rear doors of the plane. So, if you're seated next to a suspicious person in the last row, it might be a deported criminal or refugee. Story 26. I worked for Northwest about 9 years ago, so my experience may be a bit dated, but here goes. Everything is supposed to be on the plane within 20 minutes. Everything is supposed to be off the plane within 20 minutes. Airlines don't care what happens between flights, so long as we meet those 20-minute deadlines. That means we have a strong incentive to do everything fast. If it's labeled fragile, it still gets tossed around. Don't check anything breakable unless packed properly. We dislike soft bags. Please use hard-shell suitcases. There are strict cargo priorities. Gate-checked items like strollers, medical equipment, and even human remains go before your bag. Flights are often quick turns. Planes that depart again within an hour. The ramp crew handles cleaning between. Northwest was extremely serious about flight safety. Before we were allowed on the ramp, we attended safety briefings including real incident stories. One time I found 2 clasps undone on a 737 engine after maintenance. The flight was delayed and I received a safety award. If anything impacts a plane, the pilot must inspect it, even a wooden box hitting the cargo latch. The outer skin of a plane is very thin, just leaning against it can dent it. Story 27. How to save literally hundreds on your next flight. The biggest tip is if you're flying, make a connection. The price difference can be hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Don't believe it? Compare Cleveland, CLE to NY LaGuardia, LGA, usually $500 round trip. Now look at the same flight from Pittsburgh PIT, which is only an hour and a half drive away, just $150 round trip, with one additional leg. This happens because of the hub and spoke system. By flying direct, you're using a seat that a connecting passenger could have used, which means you're charged for the convenience. So, if you live near a smaller regional airport, fly through there. One of the airline industry's biggest hidden tricks is that driving to a nearby airport and adding a stop can save you hundreds. Source: I'm a pilot and aviation enthusiast. My friend travels this route once a month and always chooses PIT over CLE for the savings. Story 28. When there are 180 seats on a plane, airlines usually sell 183 to 185 tickets anticipating passengers who miss their flights. This usually works well until you're the unlucky passenger whose plane is already full upon arrival. You bought a ticket, but you cannot board. When this happens, the airline is legally obligated to book you on the next flight for free and offer accommodations. Also, luggage gets thrown. What you see on the tarmac inside the terminal is nothing compared to the rough handling at the baggage belts in the basement. You can blame the baggage workers. They have to work fast, so if a suitcase is stored at the top of a container, they'll pull it out and drop it on the belt from a height rather than carefully place it. Never put fragile or expensive items like laptops in checked luggage. If your luggage fails to arrive on time, you have the right to compensation, which is usually around €200, a significant amount. Lastly, airlines typically make about €1 profit per sold seat on continental flights, and usually no profit on smaller flights. The main reason major airlines operate small flights is to feed passengers into larger connecting flights. Story 29. Ticket counter, gate agent. 33 years of experience. Please be nice. It isn't our fault. Granted, there are difficult people out there, but we don't like dealing with problems any more than you do. My heart drops when I walk in at 5 a.m. and see delayed or canceled on the board. It sets the tone for my day. Even worse is when crew scheduling fails to notify us. There's a crew rest because the crew arrived late the previous night and were ready to board, but no crew. Not pretty. Don't expect much sympathy if your event starts 1 hour after your plane is scheduled to land. That's a foolish thing to do nowadays. We do handle emergencies, including death and illness. Just give yourself time, and I can't stress this enough. If you're traveling internationally, leave at least 3 hours for your connection. That will give you breathing room for most delays. 1-hour connections look good on paper, but in reality, no. Pet peeve: your being late does not mean I will rush through my work. Another poster said you get better help when you are calm and nice. That is so true. If you raise your voice or get rude and obnoxious, I start shutting down. I will do anything I can to get you where you need to be as soon as possible. But sometimes, there simply isn't anything available. Sometimes all the other airlines are full. I'm not lying, and I'm sorry. If I'm short with you, I'm sorry. You might be the 50th person to say to me, "You're kidding." Not an excuse. Just the reason. Maybe I haven't eaten in 8 hours, or I'm sick of dealing with this too. In all my time, I've never heard of a flight being canceled because no one is on it. I've personally sent out empty planes. It's about stats. They have to show a flight operating. Weather delays are different. Those flights will pre-cancel so delays don't back up and crews and planes aren't messed up for days. I don't like those, but would rather get that part over with than have it drag on. Story 30. Late to the game, but this one is for those who have recently become frequent flyers. So, you've settled on one airline so you can rack up the points and gain elite status. You've already put in 30 to 50,000 miles with your chosen carrier, and you realize that you chose poorly. You want to switch to a new carrier that doesn't routinely make you see red, but you don't want to have to start all over again and lose what meager benefits you've become accustomed to. There's a solution. Most airlines have challenge programs. When you enroll, they require that you send them proof of your current status. You then get the same status on their airline for a probationary period, in which you must fly a certain number of miles. It's usually around 1/3 the amount of miles it would normally take to get to that status level. Story 31. The plane you're about to fly on is broken. Without a doubt, something on that plane is broken. They're big, complex machines, and they break all the time. The good news is that anything major will have a backup or 2 or 3, and will generate a message in the cockpit to alert the crew, so they can take the appropriate action, such as diverting, turning on manual backups, or calling maintenance if they are still on the ground. Most of the time, it's trivial things like reading lights, coffee makers, and cabin trim. Don't let this prevent you from flying, though. They are incredibly safe machines. Even when they have fairly serious malfunctions, they are usually able to get back down safely. Planes are incredibly safe, even with malfunctions. Story 32. Don't wait in line when a flight is canceled or delayed. Get on the phone as soon as you can. You'll likely get an agent immediately unless there's a big weather event, and they can do just as much for you as the customer service reps can. This could mean that you get a seat that someone 20 people ahead of you in line would have gotten instead. This saved me yesterday and today. Strikes in Argentina would have made me miss my connection to the United States. Instead of waiting until I got to Buenos Aires, I called in and got rebooked on another airline and will make it home with only a 7-hour delay. My coworker didn't and is still in a hotel while I'm halfway home. Getting on the phone immediately can save you hours of delay. Story 33. Former flight attendant for a regional airline. Some generalizations: pilots are crazy. Many of them have wives at their home base and girlfriends in other cities. They spend a lot of their time in the cockpit, doing the crossword puzzle in the USA Today, on deadheads flights with no passengers. I got to ride up in the cockpit with them. One asked if I wanted to fly the plane. I agree with the person who said to give your magazines to the flight attendants. I would probably not have accepted chocolates though, as the only flight attendant on the plane, and therefore the only crew member in the cabin. I had to be very cautious about my safety. Ditto on the human remains. I will never forget a woman sobbing on one of my flights, while her husband held her silently in grief. I later learned we were carrying an infant's remains in cargo. We've also transported various organs in coolers. I ate a lot of pretzels. Female pilots tended to have smoother flights than male pilots. Not sure why this is, just an observation. There is an astonishing amount of information kept from passengers. We had to drop in altitude to avoid another plane, called it bumpy air. This is why I now hate to fly. Story 34. I was told in one of my classes that during extremely turbulent flight, although quite rare, it is possible for the plane to pass through a region of air where the speed and direction of the air cause the air over the wing to travel at the same speed or slower than the air under the wing. For those of you who don't know, an aircraft wing generates lift basically because there is a larger pressure below the wing than above, because the air is traveling faster over the wing. Anyways, essentially causing the plane to lose all lift and drop out of the air for a couple of seconds. In this unlikely case, there have been instances where a flight attendant was walking down the aisle and as the plane drops, they fly up and hit the ceiling, becoming paralyzed or killed. Most cases end in a massive settlement with the airline in exchange for keeping it hush-hush, which is why not many people hear about this. Usually, all passengers are buckled as well as flight attendants when the turbulence is bad enough to cause this. Story 35. You can bring more than one carry-on item if the second item holds a camera. According to the TSA, you may carry one bag with photographic equipment in addition to the regular allowance of one bag and one personal item. Tripods are surprisingly allowed to be carried on board. You can check in at the business class counter by walking up and inquiring about an upgrade. Just change your mind after they enter all your details. At this point, it's usually no hassle for them to check you in anyway. Sometimes you'll be able to score sweet upgrades, which makes doing this twice as rewarding. Check for the best seats on sites like SeatGuru.com and ask for them when checking in. Be prepared for them to tell you this is a different type of aircraft in 2 out of 5 cases. They are usually right. If you really want an upgrade, you can bribe the purser at the gate or the door of the aircraft. The lady below mentioned she makes $20,000. That means $100 in your palm is nothing to sneeze at. Heck, make it $200 for a long trip. This is a very unpopular thing to say in public, so I'm prepared for downvotes here, but if you have the attitude to keep it discreet, you can make this work. Story 36. I don't work for an airline, but I spent a few years flying over 100,000 miles a year. Here's a hack for when there is a major weather event. Your flight will get canceled. And when you try to call and reschedule, you'll wait on hold for hours. My longest was 4 hours to talk to Delta. And when you do get through, generally they try to send you as late as possible. But you can totally sidestep the entire airline system to get rescheduled and taken care of. During Snowmageddon 2010, I had to fly from Philadelphia to Salt Lake City on December 18th for my brother's wedding on December 21st. It dumped like 4 feet of snow in 24 hours, and the entire East Coast was shut down. I was originally scheduled for the first flight out in the morning of the 18th, but it was canceled. After spending 6 hours on the phone with Delta, I was told the earliest they could get me to Salt Lake City was December 26th. This was despite having tons of miles and every status upgrade possible. I was very frustrated. So, here's how I got around it, and what I do now. Always buy your tickets with a credit card that has some sort of concierge service that can book airline tickets. In my case, I bought my tickets with my American Express Platinum. After getting rescheduled for after Christmas, I called up Amex Concierge and Travel Service and told them what was going on. In just 15 minutes, and boom, I was on the first flight out of Philadelphia after the airport reopened on the 21st, with a free upgrade to first class, and made it just in time to my brother's wedding. Thank you, Amex, and not so thank you, Delta. Rescheduling through the airlines is a black hole. If at all possible, do any urgent or major shutdown-related flight changes through your credit card's travel department. Story 37. Not an employee, but have flown a lot. Be a friendly drinker. I love to drink, and always have drinks in flight. I usually start with 2 drinks on the beverage pass-through, but depending on the length of the flight, I press the call button if I want more. I find that often, very often, they will just give away additional bottles after the initial order, usually at least 1 or 2 more. You can be greedy though. Sometimes it seems like it's hard for them to punch it up, so they don't bother. Other times, they just seem to enjoy giving party favors and don't have much accountability for the inventory. There was one time someone told me they have a 1 bottle per hour rule. I don't remember which airline, but for the most part, I have found that airline attendants are really cool about boozing up a friendly passenger and don't really care about the money since it isn't theirs. Once again, be friendly and gracious. No bad drunks here. You can't expect it either. In-flight drinks at $4 to $6 are a better deal than airport bars anyway, so there's no way to lose. Still, I tip my hat to the kind 60 to 70% of attendants who have brought me a drink on the house over the years. Story 38. Let me give you some simple tips for not getting your luggage lost. First, show up early, but not excessively early. If you check your bag 8 hours early, there will probably be a shift change before it's loaded, and it may get left behind. Likewise, if you arrive at the last possible minute, the chances of your bag making it onto the plane are low. Don't gate check your bag, unless absolutely necessary. You'll probably get a handwritten tag, leaving you to depend on the gate agent's accuracy and penmanship. Valet checking, where you get your bag at the next stop, is okay as long as you don't forget to pick it up. Yes, this happens. Use a bag that's easy to handle. If it has sharp bits, dangling straps, a weird center of gravity, no handles, or is slippery, it's probably going to get manhandled in transit. This isn't because the baggage handlers don't care, but because they're working fast and your bag is hard to handle. Put your full name and phone number or email on something in your bag. If it loses its tag, they will open it and try to find a name. If they can figure out how to reach you, you will eventually get your bag back. Stay on your original itinerary, if at all possible. The chances of someone finding your bag and putting an updated tag on it are slim to none at a busy hub. If you do deviate from your itinerary, be prepared for your bag to arrive before or after you do. And don't freak out. The same goes for going through customs. It's not unusual for your bag to arrive later that day or in the morning. And in the event that your bag is damaged or missing, don't be rude to the person helping you find it. It's never their fault. And yelling won't help. Story 39. You know the people you go to when you make a claim for a missing bag? Yeah, they have insanely thick skin. I worked as a baggage claim agent in an international airport for 4 years. I've heard every insult ever created by man, and that was after just my first 90 days. For me to remember you or your insult, you'd have to Threaten my life in a creative way, saying, "I'm going to hurt you." Won't even raise an eyebrow. It will only raise my finger to the silent alarm and have you escorted by police. Try to physically attack me. This only happened once, by a woman who was maybe 120 pounds. She swung a right hook and hit me just in front of the ear. Hurt like crazy. I bear hugged her, lifted her in the air, and held her there until the cop arrived. Be an insanely attractive woman. Story 40. All the weird little rules are for specific reasons. Lights off for takeoff and landing in case of emergency. You have some night vision. Seatbelts on, if not moving around. Clear air turbulence can hit without warning and drop the plane 100 feet in a second. Your head will hit the ceiling hard. Electronics off on takeoff and landing, so you're paying attention in case of emergency. Window covers open on takeoff and landing, so emergency services can see inside the aircraft if needed. Broken leg? Want the exit seat for extra legroom? Tough. Exit seats must be occupied by fit, healthy people who can open the door quickly. Seats upright and tray stowed for takeoff and landing, because if anything happens and the plane hits with a thump, you could break your face, or the passenger behind you will. The safety demo by attendants. You might know all this, but first-time flyers don't. It's for legal liability. And even frequent flyers panic and can't undo their seatbelts in real emergencies. Other tidbits. The plane approaches to land on high power with full flaps, like pressing both the accelerator and brakes simultaneously, so if there's a problem, it can retract the flaps and overshoot safely. It also carries enough remaining fuel to reach another airport unless in a severe emergency, when it will dump fuel as an invisible but smelly mist. Blue ice, the toilet flush exit hole, freezes in flight. It's minus 40 degrees Celsius up there, and a block of blue sewer ice forms, dropping off as the plane descends to warmer altitudes. Sometimes it hangs on too long and crashes through the roof of a house, causing an unpleasant insurance issue or a really unfortunate way to die. This happened on my road in Manchester, UK. No injuries. One last safety note. A jet engine can and does perform like a Porsche, driving 125 miles per hour for 100,000 miles before needing an oil change. They're incredibly well made and expensive. Every aircraft component has been tested to destruction and is replaced after just 10% of its lifespan. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.